So Nigeria will likely not be at the World Cup in 2026, as overcoming the 6 points deficit against group leader South Africa in the Group C standings have become almost insurmountable. After a 1-1 draw in its home match against Zimbabwe, it is difficult to see Nigeria win all its remaining matches. There is plenty of blame to throw around for the failure at Uyo after a last-minute equalizer by Zimbabwe. Let's get into it. As we get into the video, we implore you to subscribe to our channel. We urge you to keep supporting our channel by subscribing, liking, and sharing our videos as we strive to create a lot more exciting content for your viewing pleasure. On to the video. So Nigeria was held to a draw in Nigeria's home match against Zimbabwe after a last-minute equalizer by Zimbabwe striker Tawanda Chirewa. Victor Osimhen had put the Super Eagles ahead in the 74th minute through a clinical header from a cross by Ola Aina, only for Zimbabwe to make it 1-1 in extra time. At a time when Nigeria ought to have completely locked out the Zimbabwean offensive to secure the win, they unfortunately went to sleep, allowing Tawanda Chirewa to stroll through the defense and poke in the equalizer. Who is to blame for the disaster, because it drastically reduces Nigeria's chances of being at the 2026 World Cup in the USA. This is except by some miracle everyone else in the group, especially South Africa, begin dropping points. First of all, let's start with the coach. Nigeria's win against Rwanda away on match day 1 of the March 2025 qualifiers obviously gave Nigeria a false sense of confidence in the team. To be fair, Nigeria played well and created a lot of chances in both matches. But in reality, creating chances has not been Nigeria's problem. It has been putting them away and conceding avoidable goals. Despite luck playing a big factor in the outcome of the second match against Zimbabwe, which is a topic for another video, the choices made by the coach during the match against Zimbabwe, especially in the second half, were questionable. Nigeria was not tested much in the match against Rwanda, and in a match where Zimbabwe continued to test the defense, it was naive to have two central defenders at the back, especially after Nigeria scored and needed to close out the game. Even more puzzling is the coach's decision to bring in a striker during the final minutes of the match, when the more logical decision would have been to put more bodies in midfield or defense, or preferably both. A coach who had watched the Super Eagles matches would have realized that the Super Eagles had a tendency to occasionally fall asleep or make blunders at the back. Hence, Posero played 3 central defenders at the AFCON tournament in 2023. That formation worked because when one central defender made a blunder or one of the fullbacks was absent after overlapping, there was usually one extra defender available to cover up for the lapse. A good coach builds his team around the qualities of the players in the team, and that can only be effective after proper assessment of the players in the team. Gernot Rohr once emphasized the limitation of the players at his disposal and was criticized for being defensive-minded, then frustrated out of his job as coach of the Super Eagles. Many find it convenient to forget that he was able to build a team that was able to beat Argentina by 4-2 in 2017, emphasizing defensive discipline even when attacking. Ironically, he utilized a 3-5-2 formation, which ideally Eric Chelle should have employed in the second half or towards the end of the match. Another error Eric Chelle made in the match against Zimbabwe was playing Ademola Lookman out of position to accommodate Moses Simon. It made no sense to play one of his potent weapons out of position, as it takes a while for a winger to get used to playing in the middle as a striker. It is well known that Ademola Lookman has the finishing ability, but playing as a support striker requires a few matches to get used to. Unfortunately, the Super Eagles did not play any friendlies prior to these qualifiers, so there was no opportunity to try this out in match situations. A typical example of this is Kylian Mbappe, who initially struggled at Real Madrid, where he switched from his typical role as a winger to being the central striker for Real Madrid. A winger usually operates from the starting point of more space when executing a run at goal, making it easier to plan out a strike from a distance. A striker, on the other hand, has to make quicker decisions and shoot with little or no prep time. Another issue with his selection is the choice of Chukwueze on the right wing. Chukwueze has lost his speed and ability to dribble down the touchline and always attempted to cut in through the middle, which was always crowded. This resulted in all of the Super Eagles attacking forays coming from the left wing. The one intelligent and decisive cross in the match came from Ola Aina, who is a defender, so the wingers were very ineffective in that match. The more effective choice would have been to keep Lookman on the left and play Moses Simon or Alex Iwobi on the right wing. As we have mentioned in previous videos regarding African qualifiers, to play in Africa, the one thing a team cannot do without if it wants to compete is grit. Bringing in Igo Ogbu in defense would have stabilized the defense. Similarly, a Frank Onyeka or Chrysanthus Uche, if they were invited, would have stabilized the midfield at those critical moments of the game. Finally, the removal of Victor Osimhen removed the fear factor from the Zimbabwean team, motivating them to attack. Also, this gave the Nigerian players the impression they had won the match, and so they relaxed. That may not have been the coach's intention, but psychologically that is the impression he created. This also deprived the team of a motivator, as although Troost Ekong does have leadership qualities, he is not the best motivator. That title would either go to Victor Osimhen or Leon Balogun when he was in the team. Other than his player selections on the day, the other thing that made no sense was not playing any matches before these World Cup qualifiers. In a situation where a new coach knew he intended to make tactical and personnel changes in the team, it makes no sense to go into critical World Cup qualifying matches without testing those changes in a friendly match. It is difficult to know who has the blame here, as the NFF may have been the reason no friendly matches were played. When Jose Posero came in as coach, he played a few friendlies where Nigeria tried to play expansive attacking football and kept conceding cheap goals. Like a practical coach should, he switched to a 3-4-3 formation at the AFCON tournament and took Nigeria all the way to the final. Even if Chelle was playing a formation intended at scoring goals, when Nigeria had scored a goal and the match was winding down, a practical coach would have switched the formation by bringing in an extra player in defense or midfield. Instead, he brought in an extra striker. This portrays poor decision-making, which is not the sign of a very good coach. Nigeria also played well in the first match under Finidi George and under Egwavoin, but went to sleep in the second, so there seems to be a trend here. No matter how you look at it, Chelle's decision-making on the day was totally shambolic, especially during the second half of the match. For Eric Chelle to actually double down on making the choice of going for an extra goal in the press conference after the match, it gives an impression of limited experience and his not being a practical coach. Even if he wanted an extra goal, he could have tried to do that through counterattacks, not by throwing caution to the wind in search of an extra goal. For the players, it would be easy to blame Troost Ekong for allowing the equalizer against Zimbabwe. However, a coach who has studied the Super Eagles would not have played just two central defenders, so I would defer that blame to the coach. So the final piece of the blame will go to the NFF for hiring Eric Chelle despite the selection of coaches that had applied for the role of manager of the Super Eagles. Hiring Eric Chelle was a gamble, and Nigeria is presently paying for it. Most countries serious about football hire coaches based on a consistent record of producing results, but in Nigeria it is usually based on politics or extraneous considerations. At the end of the day, a football FA that cannot see what the issues are cannot hire the right coach. Until there is a football reform that sees off certain members of the Nigerian FA, Nigeria will continue to be a perennial underachiever in soccer. Although Nigeria can still theoretically qualify, the chances are pretty low based on the draw against Zimbabwe. We are, however, still of the hope that Eric Chelle can pick himself and the Super Eagles up and salvage Nigeria's World Cup hopes. But he has to sit up. As Nigeria gets set to restart its World Cup campaign in September, we wish the Super Eagles all the best, and that fortune smiles on Nigeria along the way. Thanks for watching. Again, if you like our content, please like, share, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Also, please let us know who you think is to blame for the failure at Uyo and whether you think Nigeria can still qualify for the World Cup in 2026. See you in the next video.